Global economy is changing, and the race for raw materials is heating up. Right now, everyone is talking about
critical minerals.
Critical minerals.
Critical minerals.
Critical minerals.
And one country dominates the game, China. It is the undisputed leader. The US considers this a national security issue because whoever controls these metals controls the future. And now there is a new battlefield, the deep ocean, home to untapped sources of critical minerals. So who is trying to mine the ocean? How do they plan to do it? And should we even go down that road? Let's dive deeper. The deep sea is like an alien world, ghostly creatures drifting through endless darkness, glowing octopuses floating past boiling vents. And then there are these vast fields of metallic nodules. For mining companies, this little rock is like a treasure chest. It's packed with critical minerals, exactly what we need for EVs, batteries, and wind turbines. And there are billions of them out there, especially in this area between Mexico and Hawaii, where there are at least 21 billion metric tons of these nodules, roughly 10 times the weight of all cars on Earth. And the metals inside? Worth a jaw-dropping $9 trillion, more than double the size of German economy.
The most critical minerals for the clean energy transition typically includes copper, nickel, cobalt, and lithium.
Kay Wang, an expert on energy minerals at the World Resource Institute, explains why this matters.
The International Energy Agency has projected that the demand of critical minerals by the clean energy transition will increase by 4 to 6 times by 2040 if we're sticking to the Paris climate goal.
This is why some governments and companies are rushing to secure these minerals for their economies. Leading the charge is the Metals Company, a Canadian firm that plans to be first in line applying for mining permits from the International Seabed Authority this July. Their plan? Send bulldozer-like machines 3,000 to 6,000 meters below the surface to vacuum up nodules, along with everything living on them.
Now, the advantage with them, of course, is that they sit on the ocean floor, like the one in my hand, unattached.
This is Jared Barron, the CEO of the Metals Company.
So our job is to pick them up with the greatest efficiency and the lightest impact.
Back in 2021, the Metals Company was listed on NASDAQ and valued at $2.9 billion. But since then, the company hasn't performed so well on the stock market, and its market cap has plummeted to around $600 million. Yet, it still holds 3 exploration licenses in the CCZ, the most of any company tied with China's COMRA. So who actually hands out these deep-sea permits? We will get to that in a moment. For now, deep-sea mining faces growing pushback, because scientists say we barely understand the ecosystems at risk. Dr. Beth Orcutt, a deep-sea microbiologist, is one of the few people on Earth who has actually explored these depths.
One of the first things you notice is when you go below the area where the light goes away and it becomes total darkness. And if you keep all the lights off, you can actually see flashes of light in the water from all the bioluminescent animals and microscopic animals that live there, right? That's how they communicate. They communicate with light and chemistry.
And that chemistry is now under threat.
The deep sea serves many functions for life on Earth. So it provides nursery ground for important animals. It's very important for controlling the chemistry of our ocean.
The oceans store about 25% of our carbon emissions every year. It provides nutrients that impact marine life far beyond the ocean floor. And it could hold life-saving medical treatments. Take marizomib, a drug from deep-sea bacteria now in trials for treating aggressive brain cancer. But here's the problem. Mining doesn't just remove nodules, it disturbs entire ecosystems we barely understand. So, who is competing for the deep sea? China is leading the charge with 5 exploration licenses, followed by Russia and South Korea. But what about the US?
I think President Trump and the new American administration say what's on a lot of people's minds, and that is that critical minerals and security of supply of energy alongside critical minerals is really important. And so Trump being elected was very good news for us.
The ISA has 169 member states, but the US isn't one of them. Because back in the 70s, when deep sea resources were declared the common heritage of humanity, the US rejected the idea.
The International Seabed Authority. It is global socialism. It is world government. It is worse than the United Nations. This is an insult. Our American Navy can go anywhere we want on the high seas, and we don't need to ask some international authority.
This is the headquarters of the International Seabed Authority, the ISA. And they are the ones deciding who mines the ocean's depths and how they can be exploited. They are supposed to balance resource extraction with environmental protection. But here's the twist. The ISA isn't fully funded by the member states. It relies on fees from the deep sea mining companies, the same firms hoping to profit from the riches. For decades, governments and corporations have been exploring the Clarion-Clipperton Zone under ISA permits. Now, they are waiting for the ISA to finalize the mining regulations. And there is a new startup with a novel approach. Jason Gilham is the co-founder of Impossible Metals. He says they have a better way to mine the deep sea, one that doesn't involve bulldozing the ocean floor. To test and eventually scale up their production, they already received $15 million of investment.
We're using a fleet of these autonomous underwater vehicles to pick up the nodules from the seafloor, load them onto our vehicle while we're hovering over the seafloor, and then that fleet of vehicles brings the nodules onto the ship at the surface to continue to be used over and over.
Impossible Metals initially tested its robotic arms in shallow waters. After successful trials, the company developed its Eureka 2 model. Last year, it completed trials at depths of 2,000 meters off Florida's coast.
From an environmental standpoint, we're very focused on staying hovering over the seafloor and selectively harvesting. That allows us to leave a percentage of nodules undisturbed. It allows us to see life and avoid life that we see.
Their latest robot, Eureka 3, will pack 12 robotic arms and a 4-ton payload. Instead of bulldozing the seafloor, it hovers, but the environmental impact, still a mystery. To find out, they've teamed up with Germany's Institute for Geosciences and Natural Resources. In 2026, as Jason's team tests Eureka 3, German scientists will monitor the site, track sediment disturbance, and publish their findings.
Once we are operating with a full fleet of vehicles, which is about 200 vehicles operating at the same time, we're collecting over 6 million tons of nodules per year.
But what does the science say can go wrong? Dr. Orcutt remains cautious. She says once the robot moves, the stirred up sediment will make it difficult for AI to recognize anything.
Yes, there could be technologies that are maybe causing less disturbance. Operationally and economically, they're less proven.
But Jason believes they have found a way to keep the view clear.
The way that we'll be operating these vehicles is always into any current that is subsea, so we will always be getting any clear fresh water that is in front of us so that the cameras won't have to see through sediments in order to detect nodules and detect life.
So, is deep sea mining really the better option? Proponents claim it could reduce land-based mining, which destroys rainforests and displaces communities. But that argument doesn't convince Dr. Orcutt.
A thing we need to remember is that land mining won't go away because we have deep sea mining. It will actually compete with land mining. While land mining can be very impactful and have severe consequences, there are mitigation strategies. We have no evidence that we can restore or offset the impact that we cause in the deep sea. So the impact would be permanent.
And there is another risk, disturbing the carbon sink.
One of the most important things about carbon in the deep ocean is that it's buried and it stays down there. Nodule mining may disturb a significant amount of carbon and remobilize it into the ocean.
So are there any alternatives to deep sea mining?
According to a report produced for the International Seabed Authority, the amount of copper that we are likely to be able to extract from the Central Pacific would roughly be only about 1% of global demand for the energy transition by the middle of the next decade.
Tony Dudzik, an environmental policy expert at the Frontier Group think tank, says that for cobalt and nickel, the supply would be more significant, but battery technology is shifting, and so the future need for these metals is uncertain. Take the iron phosphate battery. Its market share is growing, and it doesn't need cobalt or nickel at all. Analysts say in 3 years, LFP batteries will surpass high nickel batteries' market share. And we also dump so much metal that could be recycled every year. If you look at this chart, the dark blue shows the volume of unrecycled metals we dump each year, and the light blue is what we would get from deep sea mining by 2035 according to ISA's estimations.
What we know is that by taking a more conscious approach to critical metals management throughout the economy, we can reduce the pressure for mineral extraction around the world. And we can also ensure that we are not destroying vulnerable deep sea ecosystems for what might be an unnecessary reason.
So should we mine the deep seas? With so many unknowns, there is no easy answer. It comes down to who gets the benefit of the doubt. Should we avoid mining and risk delaying the transition to cleaner energy? Or start mining and risk irreversible damage to biodiversity and potentially making climate change even worse? Proponents argue that we will only truly know by mining on an industrial scale and observing the consequences firsthand. But history shows that once billions are invested, turning back becomes extremely difficult. What do you think we should do? Tell us in the comments.